Hi ladies and gents, welcome back to Miss Raga's Art Room. Okay, so today we're going to do our practice ink painting. We're going to learn how to mix our inks, we're going to learn how to use our different brushes, okay, as well as create that sense of depth and space in our painting. So first, gather your supplies. Make sure you've got some of the manila scrap paper to paint on. You're going to need a bamboo bristle brush. You're going to need our 3 synthetic brushes, right? The green round, the orange angled, and the little blue detail brush, as well as your bottle of ink, your mix water. Your mix water probably looks like this. This is what I usually have set out at the tables in one of the condiment containers. Okay, of course, as well as a bucket to rinse your brushes in. All right. Also make sure that you have a palette and a rag to work with. All right, and we're going to get started. Okay, so first things first, we've got to mix up our ink. Okay, and when we go to mix our ink, you're going to notice right away that it's really tough to tell the difference in value just in the tray. So, first thing you're going to do is start with your darkest value ink. Just put like a dropper or 2 in there. You don't need a ton of the dark value ink. That's all you need. A dropper, maybe 2 droppers. That's it. Okay? Whenever you pick up an ink bottle, make sure you're grabbing from the body, not from the handle, just in case, not from the dropper part, right? Just in case somebody has accidentally not screwed this on tight. You don't want the bottle to come crashing out and ink to go everywhere. Also, these are glass, so careful, they will break if you're not delicate with them, okay? And we're gonna label this our dark ink. This is our dark, okay? Now, I've got my rinse bucket off screen here, just so that it's not in the way of everything as I work. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to, in another well, I'm going to create my middle value ink. So I'm going to take some of my water here and just fill up a little bit of water into my well. There we go. And then to that well of water, I'm going to add about a half dropper of ink. There we go. And then give it a little stir with my brush, get it all well mixed in. And what I've done is I've diluted out my pure dark value ink with water to make it a lighter value. And this is going to be my middle. Give it a little M for middle so you know which one it is. Okay. And then finally we're going to create our lightest value ink. So I'm going to once again take my dropper and let's fill up that well with some water. Now you always want to use clean water to mix your values, okay? The reason being is your rinse water is going to get dirty with ink very quickly. And so you don't want to have like this gray, dingy water you're working with, because then you can't control the value as well. And for our light value ink, we're going to add a couple drops of ink. Maybe 2, 3 or so drops of ink. And then give it a stir. Now this is going to be our lightest value. Let's give that light value ink a stir there. Okay, very diluted. Again, you're only adding 2 or 3 drops of ink to that. And this is, of course, going to be your light. So put a little L there. Okay, all right. Now let's just play around with our brushes for a second. Okay, your first brush is just your detail brush, this blue one here. So grab some of your light ink, and I want you to make, here, let's actually rotate these so we can see better. Okay, and with your light ink, I want you to just make some little light fine lines, little detail lines. Okay. And then let's grab our round brush. Grab some of that middle ink. Make some thicker lines this time now, using that middle ink. And you'll notice it's got a distinctly darker value than the light value ink. Make sure you've stirred it well too. Occasionally you have to kind of go back and re-stir these inks to get them to really stay suspended. Let's go ahead and grab your angle brush. Go for that middle ink again. I want you to hold the brush to the side, create some even wider, thicker, bolder lines this time. All right, cool. And then with your bamboo brush, now if your bristles aren't wet, take time to wet them now and shape them on the side of your container. Work that brush to almost like a little point here, like so. Okay. This is a traditional type of calligraphy brush you can use. The Chinese form for holding it is actually to hold the brush this way and to do the calligraphy. We're going to hold it the same way we would use a pencil though. Okay, a little bit of a Western style hold just so we have better control. Go ahead and dip into your dark ink, and now I want you to create some really bold, thick lines with that ink. You get a feel for those different values and how the brush works. Go ahead and dip again with that dark ink, and I want you to make some lines now that go from thin to thick, and that go from thick to thin. Okay, here we go. We've gotten a good feel for our brushes. All right, I'm gonna get this scrap paper out of the way. Let's start building our landscape. So I've got my inks mixed. Grab my fresh paper here. You can work vertically or horizontally. I'm gonna be working vertically just because it fits best on my camera this way, okay? And I'm gonna pause for a moment to make sure I've got all my materials set up. All right, thanks ladies and gents. I just wanted to check and make sure I had everything ready, readjust my camera. There we go, we're all set to go. Okay, so here's my paper. It doesn't fully fit on my screen. Okay, so I'll be drawing mostly in the middle, and I'll shuffle the paper as needed so that you can see tops and bottoms. So I'm gonna start a little bit down here so we can see mostly the top area. Go ahead, take your little brush, that detail brush, the blue one, and grab your lightest value ink. Let's create a horizon line, and we're gonna be doing a little sea landscape here. So I want you to create a little thin horizon line where our water is going to meet our sky. And we're working with the light value ink because we're furthest away in the distance. So little skinny light value line, furthest away in the distance. There's our horizon line. Okay, now grab your angle brush. Still working with the light value ink. We're going to put point down and hold it upright. And we're going to create a little sunset, a little half sun. So I want you to do is start thin, and then as it comes around, flatten that brush out and go to thick. So one more time, I'll do that again. Start thin. As you come around, flatten that brush out, go to thick. Okay? And this is going to be our sunset. Still working with that angle brush. Let's add in some clouds. If you want your clouds to look really far away, you're going to make them really small. So I'm kind of working with the edge and the point of the angle brush. This is all in the light ink. If you want your clouds to look closer to us, we'll make them a little bit bigger. So again, to make the cloud, I'm just using the edge of the brush. We can have clouds that are even cutting in front of our sunset. Again, all light ink because we are in the background. I'm just doing some little curves to my cloud. We'll have some clouds that really are like going way, way in the distance. Little teeny clouds. Way, way far back in space. You can make your clouds look any way you want to. You don't have to do puffy clouds. You could do kind of more scattered clouds or whatnot. Right? But today is just about practicing with that ink. I'm even going to have this cloud kind of like going off the page here and back in space. There we go. Now let's continue to practice with our light ink. Let's add some birds to our sky back here. Go ahead and grab your detail brush again, light ink, and let's add some little birds. Again, the tinier, smaller the bird, okay, the further away it's going to appear in the distance. The bigger the bird, the closer it's going to appear. So go ahead, give me a variety of birds happening. Give me a sense of birds in that space. All right, and now what I'd like you to do is we're going to start creating the ocean and working our way forward. I'll move my paper up a little bit. Light value ink. Grab your little brush. Little ways down from that horizon line edge. Tiny dots. They're going to indicate that there's some texture, some movement on this water. Kind of sparse, sporadic, little tiny dots. Oh, there's the bell. Now, as we move forward down the page, I want you to start making those lines a little bit longer, a little bit heavier, a little bit closer together. Still working with the light ink. All right, now we're going to switch as we move down the page from our light ink to our middle ink now. Remember, give it a little bit of a stir. And you're going to do, again, more of these lines, a little bit denser, a little bit closer together. Now, if you want to get a little fancy, you can even start adding some kind of swavy detail that goes parallel to our horizon line as we work our way further down. So now we're in that middle ink, we're still with our detail brush. Okay, let's switch brushes. As we move towards more of the middle of the page now, still working with the middle ink, I'm going to switch to my round brush. And now I'm going to do even wider water lines and even more of them as they move closer to us on the picture plane, till they go about 3/4 of the way down the page. Excellent. Once we get to about here, we're going to stop and leave a space for our sand dune. Okay, so there we go. I've got kind of my wavy lines. Now we're going to start switching to some foreground work. All right, I'd like you to go ahead and pick up that bamboo brush. Okay, make sure you've rinsed it, shape it to a point. Grab some of your dark ink just on the tip of it. And we're going to create 2 dunes on our beach here. And it's going to go from light thin line at the top as one dune goes down to heavier, thicker line off at the bottom. And then same thing, heavier, thicker line as the dune intersects. And then as it goes to the top, lighter, thinner line as it disappears. And this is it with your dark ink because it's in the foreground. Let's go ahead, let's put in our dunes there. And then rinse your bamboo brush. Now at this point, go ahead and pick your green round brush back up, pick up some of that dark ink, and you can finish any other water details coming into the foreground and in behind those dunes with the dark ink in the round brush, right? If we want to make a lot of waves, we'll get it to come way up close to our water. Check out the sense of space we've already made. Okay, time to add our palm tree now. Okay, so working with the round brush again, dark ink because we are in the foreground. We're going to add a palm tree to one of these dunes. Pick either your left or right dune. I'm going to do my right one because I'm right-handed, so it's just easier for me. And I'm going to go up towards the water area. I'm going to start thin and go thick and create a line. I'm then going to redip, dark ink again. Dark ink because I'm working in my foreground. I'm going to go to the top and come down again. And that's going to start my trunk. I'm now going to grab my detail brush with dark ink, and I'm going to start creating right over top of those water lines where that palm tree overlaps. I'm going to start creating some bark texture with just my little detail brush. I'm going to create some bark texture on this tree. And already we've got quite the sense of space we've created, right? Check that out. Looks like it's fading away off in the distance. Love it. Okay. Get a bit more this kind of bark texture in there, like little dashes, little dots. Just using that detail brush, I want to have a sense that the surface of this palm tree trunk is like not smooth, it's that kind of like striped bark. You could even do like little curved lines like that. Just want to give it a little bit of texture. Awesome. Okay, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to create the palm fronds. So first I'm going to take my detail brush and give it some stems to build those fronds off of, radiating out from the top point of that palm tree, going out from the center, like so, even overlapping the trunk. And then off of these little stems, I'll add those little grassy leaves, those little grassy palm fronds, and build those up over on top of each other. Again, this is all with that dark value ink, most detail, highest contrast happening in my foreground, right? It's part of how we create that sense of space. We've used overlap, right? My palm tree overlaps the water, my dunes overlap the water. My palm tree is sitting kind of on top of or behind that dune. We're getting a real sense of space on this beach scene. I'm just gonna keep going back, picking up more ink, and add a whole bunch of leaves to the top of this tree. And obviously, you know, this manila scrap paper is just cheap paper for us to practice on. Your rice paper and your drawing paper will have a little bit higher contrast with the ink, so you'll see those values even a little bit better. But this is great paper to learn and practice on because it's super thick, it's super absorptive. Gives you a real feel for how the ink works. Now, one thing you'll notice too is the ink doesn't smudge. The ink stains the paper. That's the very nature of the beast. We actually want that. It's how we'll be able to put watercolor, if you choose to add some tinted color to your painting, over top of it without smudging any of the drawing work below, because it's in essence dyed or stained the paper. Okay. And one last set of fronds on this part of the tree here. Really building up a lot. Excellent. Yay, there we go, cute little palm tree. Okay, let's add some details in and around this palm tree. Let's take our dark ink again. Let's add a little coconut or two that have like fallen in the sand here. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna start with a dot for the coconut, and then we're gonna give it a little line detail, like it's actually fallen in the sand, like a little wave underneath it. Like so. A little sand wave, like it's sitting in the sand. Let's also, I'm gonna have to put a little bit more ink down here in my palette. Whoop, a little bit more. Let's also add some beach grasses around the palm tree and at the edges of our dunes. So we're gonna go thick to thin lines, still working with that detail brush. Right, let's add all these wonderful details here that are closest to us now. Build up some dune grass. We can even have some dune grass again that like comes from within the sand dune itself, right? We give it a little line to anchor it. Then we have some dune grass here, just little lines. Remember, it can overlap. It'll just show that those coconuts are happening behind the dune grass. Right, maybe we have some dune grass here at this overlap. And let's say, you know what, we've got maybe some dune grass happening here over to the side and off the top of this dune. So again, I'm going to give myself kind of a little sand line to follow where that grass might be nestled in that sand. Again, working with the dark value ink, all that dark value and detail happening in our foreground. Okay, let's even add now, let's get really fancy and even add a little bit of shading to our foreground. Let's even add some more value and contrast. Grab your angle brush. Pick up some of that middle ink. Okay, now don't be afraid. It's gonna work out. Where our dunes overlap, let's go ahead and give ourselves a little bit of a shadow using that angle brush, middle value ink. Give ourselves a little bit of a shadow where that dune overlaps. Let's also pick a side of our trunk to be the dark side. I'm going to pick the inside. Let's give the dark side of our trunk with that middle value ink a little bit of a shadow. So middle value ink now to do a little shading. Let's, underneath our other little dunes where we have some little grass patches, add a little shading there where we've maybe added some other grass patches and little lines in our dune. Okay, and then lastly, to give our sand a little bit of texture, let's take our bamboo bristle brush, remember it's been rinsed, pick up some light value ink now. And let's just add a little bit of shaded texture to our sand in the front here. Kind of artistically just put some shaded texture to our sand so it feels different than our water. You know what I mean? We want our water to kind of feel like that lightest and brightest, and our sand we want to feel like it's got a little bit of texture, like those shadows in sand. Excellent. And there it is, ladies and gents. There's our little practice beach scene. You've had a lot of great experience today. You've learned how to mix your different values of ink. You've learned how to work with the different brushes, okay, and control them. You've learned how to use value, lightest value in the background, middle value in the middle ground, darkest value, highest contrast details in the foreground. And look at that sense of space you've created. Gorgeous. All right, terrific, ladies and gents. Thanks for practicing with me today, and I look forward to seeing you again in Miss Raga's art room.